Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking a fascinating and, I have to say, a wildly unusual detour.
Very unusual for us.
Right. Normally we're poring over, market data, internal memos, or some really complex scientific research. But the source material you shared with us this time,
Hmm.
it is pure high-voltage narrative tension. It's a chilling, custom-written psychological thriller from the author Swapnil, and we are going to treat it like the most detailed research paper we have ever encountered.
That is precisely the mission. I mean, that's exactly how we have to look at it. We're approaching this short story not as fiction, but as a meticulously constructed blueprint for psychological warfare.
A blueprint, I like that.
It is. It's a complete narrative arc, a fascinating study in pacing and dread, and honestly, a masterclass on the weaponization of solitude. We're going to dissect how Swapnil used structural techniques to just ramp up that fear, treating every single plot point as a documented fact within the world he created.
Absolutely. So this session is less about numerical analysis and, more about the deep, chilling psychology and the cinematic atmosphere that's embedded in every single scene.
In every line.
Our goal today is to reverse engineer the fear. We're going to analyze the arc. We're going to tear apart the central theme of isolation, which is really the protagonist's central vulnerability, and trace the precise path of escalating paranoia that leads to this profound, unsettling mystery. We need to figure out why this story feels so intensely personal and so immediately terrifying.
Well, what makes this piece so remarkable, I think, is its duality. It functions as a classic ghost story, that creeping, illogical, supernatural dread.
Yeah, the stuff that gets under your skin.
Exactly. But it's also, at the same time, a taut, grounded psychological thriller where the fear comes from an unknown human element. And the terrifying realization for you, the listener, is that the core of this whole mystery relies entirely on the protagonist, Dinesh's pre-existing mental state.
Which brings us to our initial hook, the question that Swapnil really forces us to confront from the very first paragraph. What is the true ultimate cost of self-imposed solitude? And can loneliness literally evolve into an entity that comes knocking at your door?
Ooh.
Get ready, because we are diving deep into the ghost story of Dinesh.
So to really understand the terrifying climax, we first have to understand the quiet tragedy of the opening. I mean, Swapnil sets the stage with this almost deceptive domesticity.
Right. It feels normal at first.
It feels completely normal. We start with Dinesh, who is marking his birthday by, not celebrating, but by babysitting the Kapoor twins, Ruhan and Rihan. It's a familiar routine task, right? It's a favor for friends who still include him, if, only tangentially in their lives.
And those opening moments establish this perfect immediate contrast that just defines Dinesh's entire life. We see the wealth and, frankly, the freedom of the Kapoors as they pull their Mercedes out of the garage. They're heading off to the opera, which just signals opulence, connection, and a life that's being lived really fully. And then there's Dinesh, the caretaker, heading back inside this big, beautiful, but very temporary house. He's standing on the outside of Celebration, looking in.
That is the pivotal visual. You said it perfectly. The external scene is all light and movement. The internal reality for him is confinement and stagnation. We have the temporary chaos of the children, which, for a moment, it masks Dinesh's deep internal void.
A distraction.
It's a total distraction. And Swapnil gives us these brilliant, contrasting details about the boys, and it's so critical because it introduces the last vestiges of joy and light before, the darkness descends.
Let's look at those personalities for a second, because they're not just kids. You have Ruhan, the 6-year-old, the mischievous one, just pure external energy. He's bouncing off the walls, dressed as Spider-Man, all giggling and running in circles. He represents this kind of joyful, messy life that Dinesh has completely and purposefully excluded himself from.
And then there is Rihan, the quieter twin. He sort of lingers slightly behind, always clutching a well-used sketchbook and crayons, entirely engrossed in his own internal imaginative world, drawing these complex, fantastical creatures.
He's an interesting mirror, isn't he?
He's a fascinating mirror. He represents a quiet, solitary inner life. But unlike Dinesh, Rihan's internal world is creative and vibrant and full. Dinesh's is just empty.
I agree, but that joy is so fleeting. As soon as Dinesh closes that door, the real tone sets in, and Swapnil uses this sensory writing brilliantly here. The silence of the house doesn't just return, it, and I'm quoting, loomed, pressing against him like a weight. I'm still hung up on that phrasing. Why is that so critical?
Because that physical verb, pressing, it transforms an emotional state into a palpable antagonist. It's not just quiet, it's physical oppression. It's an active force. It prepares us for the idea that the threat is internal first, before anything from the outside gets in.
So the house itself is the first monster.
In a way, yes. And we quickly learn about Dinesh's deep psychological state. His central conflict is this self-imposed isolation. He spent years prioritizing a very specific vision of professional success over genuine human relationships.
This goes way beyond just being a workaholic, though.
Yeah.
The text is very specific that this isn't circumstantial isolation. It's a deliberate, chosen state.
Yes.
Dinesh consciously let go of friendships, of family, of even love.
Yeah.
This creates what we can call a self-imposed vulnerability. If Dinesh were a socially integrated babysitter, that first strange message would just be a funny curiosity.
Precisely. A funny text you'd screenshot and send to your friends.
Yeah.
But for him, it's different. Swapnil is essentially saying, I am introducing a vulnerability that the entity must exploit. Solitude for Dinesh isn't a neutral state, it's a consequence.
And the irony is just, it's absolutely stark. This solitude started as a shield, right?
Yeah.
Protecting him from the messiness of connection. But now, on his birthday of all days, it feels like a prison. The text emphasizes that he feels the distance from others more sharply than ever before. This psychological foundation is the soil in which all the terror is about to grow.
You're so right. And because he is so profoundly alone, every small detail gets magnified by that loneliness. This amplified anxiety is essential for the story's intensity. If you were constantly texting friends about his bizarre night, like, hey, you won't believe what just happened, the tension would just diffuse immediately.
It would pop like a balloon.
Exactly. The isolation ensures the tension remains localized, focused entirely on Dinesh's internal struggle.
Which leads us directly to the inciting incident, the moment the external world begins to puncture his protective little bubble. The ringtone and the first message.
Ah, the ringtone.
His phone chimes the loud, irritating happy birthday to you ringtone. And the fact that the tune is annoying, but tonight it carries a bittersweet sting, is so poignant. It's this momentary flicker of hope that his isolation might be broken, even if the sound is off-key.
It's the sound of something he's missing. And then the first communication arrives from an unknown number. On the way.
Just 3 words.
Yeah.
So utterly nonspecific, yet deeply suggestive.
His initial reaction, and this is crucial for establishing the psychological realism here, is dismissal. He tries to rationalize it away. It's a mix-up, maybe a forgotten surprise from the Kapoors. It's a very human attempt to try and push the anomaly back into the safe category of the mundane.
Of course. He's trying to find a normal explanation because the alternative is too scary to think about.
Right. But that fleeting moment of warmth, when Ruhan, the little Spider-Man, starts singing along to the off-key ringtone, it briefly breaks the tension. It provides a momentary release before the subsequent invasion.
It's almost cruel foreshadowing, isn't it?
It is. The clock has definitely started ticking, but Dinesh hasn't realized the danger yet. He's just hoping, desperately, that the message means a nice surprise for his forgotten birthday.
That contrast is key to Swapnil's pacing. The reader, we know what's coming, but Dinesh is delayed by hope. He has to cling to the rational explanation because the alternative, that a total stranger knows where he is and is planning to meet him, is just too frightening to accept while he's responsible for 2 small children.
And that's where the story really digs the hook in.
Okay, here is where the narrative really shifts gears. It moves from that internal psychology to a direct external intrusion. That fleeting hope for connection literally rings hollow when the doorbell, not the phone, demands his attention. The transition in part 2 is less smooth and more of a violent jolt.
Exactly. It's an interruption. Dinesh is still caught up in the mundane chaos of corralling the boys for ice cream, trying to restore some kind of order, when the doorbell rings. He misses the first ring over the noise, which is a great use of, diegetic sound.
Yeah, it's a great point.
But the insistent second ring cuts right through that domestic scene. That word insistent, it shifts the energy instantly from fun babysitting gig to specific dread.
And then Swapnil delivers the first truly unsettling visual clue, the unsettling delivery. Dinesh opens the door, and there is the pizza delivery man holding a large box.
Oh.
Now, this feels like an homage to classic horror tropes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the twist is all in the details.
Let's deep dive into the details of this delivery man, because this is where the story uses the psychological concept of the uncanny valley.
Tell me more.
It's not just a guy with a pizza. His smile is described as unnervingly wide, almost too perfect, and it lingered just a bit too long.
That detail is masterful. It's so
Yeah.
creepy. It suggests something. Performing the role of human normalcy, but failing the execution just slightly. He's too happy, too perfect.
Yes. It's not quite right.
And that unsettling imperfection plays directly into Dinesh's rising discomfort. His intuition, which has been dulled by years of isolation, is suddenly screaming that something is fundamentally wrong with this picture.
And then the crucial exchange about payment, which just seals the unsettling nature of the event. No need, the delivery man says, all cheerily. It's already paid for. And Dinesh fumbles. He's confused, but he instinctively grabs the box and quickly shuts the door. He barely manages a thank you. Why the rush? Because the presence was aggressively discomfiting. He is shutting out the anomaly, but he has already accepted the physical evidence of its intrusion. He took the box.
He took the box. The discomfort is immediate and unshakable. He hadn't ordered it, and he knew for a fact the Kapoors were at the opera. He desperately tries to rationalize a neighbor's mistake, a kind gesture from the parents he forgot about, but the anomaly is just too strong. This is where Swapnil elevates the medium of the threat. We've moved from an abstract text message to a physical manifestation delivered by an unnerving human proxy.
And the confirmation of that threat arrives immediately, connecting the abstract right back to the physical. The phone chimes again, "Happy birthday to you," and the text confirms his absolute worst fear. "Don't worry, I already ordered pizza."
That link is just devastating. The physical event at his door is now directly tied back to the previous anonymous digital threat. The abstract threat is now concrete and present, and it knows exactly what he just did.
Someone knew he was there, knew it was his birthday, and orchestrated this highly specific physical delivery.
The panic is logical. I mean, his immediate reaction, calling Mr. Kapoor, is an attempt to anchor himself back to the reality of his job. He needs an external confirmation that this is all a mistake, a prank, anything that isn't true terror.
But the Kapoors, they're in their own environment of safety and celebration. They just laugh it off. "Oh, maybe a neighbor sent it." They assure him everything is fine.
Which, ironically, only deepens his isolation in that specific moment.
Completely, because it confirms that the terror is his and his alone to face. The bizarre message continues to gnaw at Dinesh's thoughts, even as he's setting the pizza down for the cheering boys, turning on a cartoon. He's performing normalcy for the kids, but internally the dread is a physical force.
This is the critical juncture, what we'd call the point of no return. The phone buzzes again. The escalation is purely narrative now. We're moving past the playful, observational tone and into a direct threat. Message 3. Won't be long now. Enjoy.
That is just...
That sequence, "won't be long now," paired with that chillingly polite "enjoy," is horrific. It implies anticipation, pleasure in the impending encounter, and an absolute certainty of access. It's no longer a mistake. It's an appointment.
And this is the moment the fear transitions from mere paranoia to required self-preservation. Dinesh's eyes dart to the windows. He checks the lock on the door. He peers outside, and the street is deserted.
That use of sensory deprivation, the vast, empty street, it just highlights his complete isolation. There are no witnesses, no neighbors out walking their dogs, just him and the 2 children against an unseen observer who is on the way.
It's the ultimate psychological horror setup. The vulnerability of the lone individual against this omniscient entity. His fate feels sealed because his internal defense system was already compromised by his years of chosen solitude.
I just keep thinking about the strategic brilliance of Swapnil's choice of escalating mediums here.
Oh, it's brilliant.
It started with an impersonal text, moved to a human proxy, the delivery man, and now the text announces the final move. The entity itself is coming. The terror is getting closer, more personal, and so much more aggressive.
There's no turning back for him now. The door is locked, but something's already inside his head.
We've hit the peak. I mean, the narrative tension absolutely explodes here, but it's an explosion driven entirely by sound and psychological dread, not physical violence. We move from that creeping dread to a rapid, total collapse of reality.
Indeed. And it all happens with shocking speed, centered around the sound of that specific, irritating ringtone, which has now become the signature tune of terror.
It's been weaponized.
Completely. The chime comes again, "Happy birthday to you." This time, the text is the direct, terrifying invasion. "I'm already inside. Where are you?"
Chilling. Just absolutely chilling. The external threat has breached the internal sanctuary. The vulnerability is complete. Dinesh's breath hitches. His hands tremble. And Swapnil emphasizes his desperate, irrational actions. He tries to call the number.
Busy line.
He tries again.
Busy line.
And then he sends a hurried, scrambling text. He is attempting to force a rational response onto a completely irrational supernatural situation.
But the rational world has completely abandoned him. And then comes the defining sound detail, the auditory confirmation that makes this story transcend the thriller genre. The ringtone echoes from upstairs.
That is the narrative point. That's the moment where the psychological thriller fully merges with the ghost story. The entity isn't just watching, it used his personal information to get inside, and now it's announcing its presence in the most intimate way possible, using the sound of his own phone, which should be in his hands. It's an inversion of intimacy.
An inversion of intimacy, I love that phrase. A personalized signal of connection is now the sound of ultimate terror.
And it also blurs the line between a breakdown and a genuine invasion. Is the sound even real? Or is Dinesh, who we know is already compromised by isolation, experiencing an auditory hallucination?
And Swapnil leaves that beautifully ambiguous. The fear is real either way, fueled by his own pre-existing terror of being truly alone.
We have to spend time analyzing this moment of auditory invasion. Dinesh is just immobilized by fear, listening to the sound of his own life being weaponized, vibrating from the upper floor. And then message 5 arrives, the final horrifying command. I'll come down, stay right there.
The entity is playing with him. It's controlling his movements. It's narrative compliance. Dinesh has been so compliant and isolating himself for years that he is now, in this moment, compliant with the entity's directive. He is frozen, waiting for the terror to descend.
He's a puppet.
He is. And in this moment of sheer blind panic, he shouts for the boys, Ruhan! Rehan! Only to realize the room's empty.
That realization the children are gone is the final catastrophic blow. This narrative choice is incredibly effective. Let's talk about that. Why did Swapnil choose to make the children disappear before the final confrontation? What narrative purpose did their absence serve in magnifying Dinesh's panic?
Well, the boys were Dinesh's anchor to reality. They were his temporary shield against his own loneliness. Their presence meant noise, laughter, responsibility, a reason not to panic.
Right, he had to keep it together for them.
Exactly. Once they are gone, Dinesh is returned to his default, undefended state of profound solitude, but now it's magnified by immense guilt and immediate terror for their safety. The house instantly transforms. It goes from a place of momentary light into a maze of shadows, emphasizing his internal disorientation.
And Swapnil uses sensory details to ramp up the visual panic again. The lights flicker, casting long, shifting shapes on the walls. The sense of security is just annihilated. Dinesh is alone in the dark, waiting for a sound to come down the stairs.
And this leads to Dinesh's final reflective thoughts. The narrative's moment of profound emotional collapse. Memories of the boys flash through his mind, Ruhan's little Spider-Man antics, Rehan's detailed sketches. But these brief flashes of human connection are quickly overshadowed by the crushing realization.
The text explicitly states he thought about the catastrophic choices he had made, the connections he had pushed away. He had spent years hiding behind his work, letting relationships just slip away. The isolation that was once his shield is now his ultimate doom.
And the entity didn't have to break down the door, did it? Dinesh's emotional vacancy provided the perfect point of entry.
It's a profound emotional climax. The threat found him because he was undefended, alone, and so emotionally vulnerable. His failure to cultivate genuine connections made him the perfect target for a creature that communicates only through digital, impersonal means.
The story suggests the ghost isn't just a monster. It is loneliness given form, seeking to extinguish the last flicker of connection Dinesh had access to, the two boys.
Okay, so an hour later, the narrative shifts perspective to the Kapoors returning, and the aftermath is just as chilling, perhaps even more so, than the buildup. They walk into a scene shrouded in this eerie, specific silence.
The domesticity is still present, but it's twisted. It's static. The TV is still on, playing brightly colored cartoons to a completely empty room.
That juxtaposition, the noise of children's entertainment in a silent, dead house, is such a powerful cinematic shot description. You could just see it. Mrs. Kapoor's voice is trembling as she calls out their names. The expectation of chaotic children is met with absolute unnerving void.
And then, the only chilling artifact left behind. Dinesh's phone, found abandoned at the bottom of the staircase, its screen illuminated with the message history.
That artifact tells the whole story of the terror, without any physical signs of a struggle. It suggests surrender or just absolute instant compliance.
And Mr. Kapoor, trying to maintain his footing in reality, attempts one final rational action. He calls the mysterious number that tormented Dinesh. This choice is so vital. He's trying to trace the terror back to a real person, a real motive, an earthly explanation.
And this is where Swapnil delivers the final, deeply unsettling detail that links the paranoia right back to the mundane. The automated voice.
It's so good.
The response is immediate and profoundly anticlimactic, yet absolutely horrifying. An automated voice stating, "Welcome to the pizza place. How may I assist you?" The Kapoors exchange these uneasy glances, the sterile, uncanny voice just sending chills down their spines.
This is Swapnil's narrative masterstroke. And it's risky. It risks undercutting the previous terror, but instead it elevates it. Why? Because it suggests the entity utilized a real, harmless, and completely sterile service as a temporary mask.
The terror didn't come from a dramatic, demonic voice.
No, it came from the automated, impersonal voice of commerce. The ghost story is rooted in the fear of the hypermundane being weaponized. It's the ultimate confirmation that the threat originated not from some supernatural dimension, but from the digital ether, the realm of disconnection and commerce that Dinesh knew so well.
I agree, it's brilliant, but it raises an important question for analysis. Does linking the supernatural event to a sterile commercial voice truly add depth, or does it risk undercutting the pure terror of the previous internal struggle? What do you think?
I would argue it adds tremendous depth because it grounds the ghost story in contemporary anxiety. The modern fear isn't just the monster under the bed, it's the feeling of being watched and controlled through our technology. The entity didn't need magic. It needed a telephone number and access to the infrastructure of service and commerce.
That's a scary thought.
It makes the terror replicable and universally accessible, which is far scarier than a singular demon. It confirms that the void Dinesh felt, the commercialization of his life, is what ate him.
That makes perfect sense. The police investigation, as we expect in these kinds of narratives, yields nothing. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, no trace of Dinesh or the boys. The physical world offers absolutely no explanation for their synchronized silent disappearance.
Days turn to weeks, and the mystery deepens, transforming into this lasting, crushing trauma for the Kapoors. They are, and I quote, haunted by guilt. The guilt of having left them, of laughing off that initial phone call, of not seeing the terror unfold. This is the first wave of emotional collateral damage caused by Dinesh's isolation.
And the lack of closure forces the community to create its own explanation, which leads directly to the story becoming local legend, the town's folklore. The psychological terror has to be externalized. Otherwise, the remaining residents can't cope with the randomness of it.
And this externalization takes specific forms. Whispers spread of strange footsteps, glimpses of shadows in the empty Kapoor house. The trauma of the event has essentially infected the location itself. But the most effective auditory ghost is the ringtone.
Oh, of course. That irritating, off-key sound, the one that offered Dinesh a momentary bittersweet sting of hope, has become the permanent signature of his haunting. The sound of a distant "happy birthday to you," ringtone echoing in the dead of night.
It's a tragic repeating loop, trapping the terror in a cycle of eerie nostalgia and warning. It's heartbreaking.
And finally, the most poignant image, reinforcing the central theme of isolation, comes not from the physical world, but from the dreams of children. The community's children, pure and uncompromised, are the only ones who can perceive the final resting state of Dinesh.
Yes. The story says the children saw Dinesh in their dreams, always alone, always searching, reaching out with a silent plea for connection.
This narrative conclusion delivers the ultimate emotional verdict on Dinesh's life. His ghost isn't angry or vengeful, it's desperate and profoundly isolated, repeating the very emotional state he lived in, only now he's physically trapped by it for eternity.
Swapnil concludes the tale by stating that the disappearance became a chilling tale of isolation and the price it exacted, haunting those who now tread carefully. Those who once felt safe in their routines are now guarded, taught by Dinesh's fate to fear the price of solitude. His ghost serves as a permanent, cautionary tale against self-imposed disconnection.
The genius here is that the author gave the ghost of isolation a personalized address. He didn't just write a general horror story. He custom-built a monster out of Dinesh's deepest psychological failure.
This narrative, crafted by Swapnil, is just a potent and emotionally devastating case study. It took the psychological reality of self-imposed solitude and made it the engine of a terrifying narrative. The terror wasn't arbitrary. It was catalyzed, fed, and defined by Dinesh's own emotional vacancy and his failure to maintain human connections.
To synthesize this incredible journey, we started with Dinesh, shielded by his work and his self-imposed distance, only to have that very shield shattered by a physical intrusion, signaled by a simple pizza delivery. The line between a human thriller and the truly paranormal blurred completely when the sound of his own life, that irritating personalized ringtone, sounded from the darkness upstairs.
The core lesson here, which the story really imparts to you as the listener, is the absolute necessity of genuine human connection. The entity that targeted Dinesh didn't need a key. It needed a crack in his psychological defenses, the isolation he had created for himself.
It found the weak spot.
It found the weak spot. The entity simply utilized the channels of his emotional void, turning his loneliness into a fatal vulnerability. This narrative argues that connection is not a luxury. It is a fundamental defense mechanism against the unknown.
And that leads us back to that single, most unsettling detail that defines the modern horror of Swapnil's story: the automated pizza voice. We have to ask, was the entity a true supernatural ghost story that simply used a real service as a mask to bridge the gap between digital and physical? Or was the horror always rooted in the mundane fear of the unknown, the idea that something so sterile, so commercial, so everyday could be weaponized against us?
And what happens when the fear we keep inside, the fear of truly being alone, finally finds a real physical way to enter our locked doors? The story is a dramatic warning that knowledge of the self and maintaining those necessary human connections may be the most important defense of all against the ultimate price of solitude.
So consider your own connections tonight and what defenses you have built against the silence. A truly chilling and deeply analytical deep dive into a powerful narrative by Swapnil. Thank you for joining us as we unpack the ghost story of Dinesh.
Tread carefully.
Farewell, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.